The first time I walked into Eli Yoder's pantry in Holmes County, Ohio, I counted 23 glass jars on a single shelf. No labels, no barcodes, no expiration dates. Just amber liquid, dark roots, and the slow, quiet bubble of something alive. And his grandmother, 84 years old, hadn't been to a pharmacy in over 40 years. That's not a slogan. That's not an exaggeration for the camera. That's the woman standing in her own kitchen, sharp as a tack, telling me she replaced her entire medicine cabinet with a $2 ferment her own grandmother taught her to make in 1923. 3 ingredients, 1 mason jar, total cost under $2 per batch. And it does the work that 30-some bottles in your bathroom right now are trying and failing to do. I'm going to show you exactly how to make it, the exact ratios, the exact timing, and the second stage technique that almost nobody outside 2 Amish counties in America still knows. I found that second stage in a single line of a handwritten Pennsylvania family binder dated November of 1923 on page 41. And once you hear what it is, you'll understand why no supplement company has ever sold it. And before you think this only works if you're building some off-grid cabin from scratch, stop. You can start this tonight in your existing kitchen with what's already in your refrigerator. No permits, no special equipment, no raised bed garden required. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, because what I'm about to share is the kind of knowledge that used to be handed down at the kitchen table, and somewhere along the line, somebody decided it was more profitable if you forgot it. Now, I want to take you back about 6 years to the first time I drove out to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, looking for something I couldn't quite name. I was 53 years old at the time. My medicine cabinet had a row of orange pill bottles, a multivitamin the size of a horse pill, a fish oil capsule that smelled like a dock at low tide, and 3 different things for digestion that the pharmacist had recommended after I complained that nothing was working. I was spending close to $90 a month on supplements alone. Not prescriptions, just supplements. The stuff you buy because the commercials told you that as a man over 50, you needed it. And I felt worse every year. I want you to think about that for a second. We are the most supplemented generation in American history. We spend, as a country, almost $14.8 billion a year on non-vitamin, non-mineral dietary supplements alone. That number comes straight from a published study on complementary medicine use in the United States, $14.8 billion. That is roughly 31% of what Americans pay out of pocket for prescription drugs in the same year. And here is the kicker. We are sicker, more inflamed, and more tired than our grandparents were at the same age. The Amish are not. There was a study published through the National Center for Biotechnology Information looking specifically at vitamin and supplement use in Old Order Amish communities in Pennsylvania. The researchers found something that quietly contradicts almost everything the supplement industry has built its empire on. The Old Order Amish use dietary supplements at higher rates than they use conventional medications, particularly the women. But here is the part most people miss. Their use of herbal supplements is associated with significantly less use of conventional medications. The vitamin pills don't replace medicine, the herbal traditions do. And those herbal traditions, 90% of the time, are based on something fermented in a jar in somebody's cellar. I sat at Eli's kitchen table the first afternoon, and his grandmother, her name is Miriam, she goes by Mim, set down a small glass in front of me, maybe 2 ounces of liquid in it, the color of dark apple cider, with a faint cloud at the bottom and a smell that hit me before I even leaned in, sharp, almost like horseradish but warmer, like the back of your sinuses just woke up after a long nap. She said, "Drink it." I drank it, and for the first 10 seconds I thought she had poisoned me, because my whole head felt like somebody had opened a window I didn't know was closed. My eyes watered, my nose ran, and then, about 30 seconds later, I felt something I had not felt in years. I felt awake. Not caffeinated, not jittery, awake. That was the ferment. 3 ingredients: apple cider vinegar, raw honey, and fresh horseradish root. The kind of thing you could throw together for under $2 at any farmer's market in October. And the only reason almost nobody outside of Lancaster and Holmes County knows about it the way Mim knows it is that there is no patent on horseradish, there is no patent on raw honey, there is no patent on vinegar. And without a patent, no company on earth is going to spend the millions of dollars it takes to run a clinical trial to prove what generations of Amish women already proved with their own families. A consultant from a major pharmaceutical firm reportedly described it in 2009 as commercially inconvenient. Think about that phrase. Not ineffective, not unsafe, commercially inconvenient. Because if a $2 ferment can replace a $60 bottle, the bottle loses. And in this country, the bottle wins almost every time. But Mim never lost, and neither did her mother. And neither did her grandmother, whose handwriting I would eventually see on page 41 of a leather binder she pulled out of a cedar chest in the back room, a binder dated 1923, written in the kind of careful, penciled cursive that people don't make anymore. So let me tell you exactly what's in that jar, because the recipe itself is the first half of the gift. The second half, the part nobody is talking about, comes later. Stay with me. Here is the base ferment, the one Mim makes every September, the moment the horseradish in her garden is mature enough to dig. You take 1 cup of raw, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar, the kind with the mother floating in it. You add half a cup of raw local honey. Local matters, because the trace pollens in local honey are what the older women always said built up resistance through the cold months. And you grate by hand on a fine grater approximately 3 to 4 ounces of fresh horseradish root. That's roughly a piece the size of your thumb, all the way to the size of 2 thumbs end to end. You put all 3 into a clean quart mason jar. You stir it with a wooden spoon, never metal, because metal reacts with the vinegar. You cap it loosely, not tightly, because this thing is going to breathe. And you put it in a cool, dark cabinet for 14 days. 2 weeks. That's it. Once a day, you give it a gentle swirl. What's happening inside that jar during those 2 weeks is what makes the whole thing work. The vinegar is already acidic, with a pH around 3. The honey, once it dissolves into the vinegar, starts to feed the natural microbes present on the horseradish root. Over the first 3 to 5 days, the pH drops further. New organic acids start to form, including lactic acid, the same acid your gut bacteria produce when they're healthy. By day 14, the honey vinegar matrix has reached what food chemists call peak organic acid concentration. That phrase comes straight from fermentation research, not from me, and the horseradish itself is undergoing something even more interesting. The glucosinolates in horseradish, which are the compounds that give it that wasabi-like punch, undergo partial hydrolysis in the acidic environment. They break down into active isothiocyanate compounds. Research from the University of Illinois, led by a researcher named Elizabeth Jeffrey, demonstrated that enzyme activity in horseradish is significantly enhanced under acidic conditions. The vinegar isn't just preserving the horseradish, it's amplifying it. It's a catalyst. The Amish women who started doing this 200 years ago had no idea about isothiocyanate compounds. They didn't need to know. They knew their families didn't get sick the way their English neighbors did. After 2 weeks, you strain it. You press the horseradish pulp against a fine sieve and squeeze every last drop out. You bottle the liquid in dark glass if you have it, and you store it in a cool place. 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon in the morning on an empty stomach. That's the dose Mim gave me, and that by itself is what replaced about 12 of the bottles in my old medicine cabinet within the first 60 days. Now you might be asking yourself the obvious question. If this is real, if it actually works, why have I never heard of it? Why isn't it on the shelf at the pharmacy next to the elderberry syrup and the echinacea capsules? Why didn't my doctor mention it? Why didn't anyone? I asked myself the same thing, and the answer, when I finally pieced it together, made me angrier than I expected. Here is the structural problem, and you need to understand this clearly because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. To make a health claim about any food or supplement in the United States, the manufacturer is required to back that claim with clinical trials. Clinical trials cost millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions, and nobody anywhere undertakes that kind of expense unless they have a way to recover the cost. The way you recover the cost is by holding a patent. The patent gives you the exclusive right to sell that product at the price you set for a defined period of time. No competitor can undercut you. That is how the entire pharmaceutical and supplement industry funds its existence. Now ask yourself, who owns the patent on apple cider vinegar? Nobody. Who owns the patent on raw honey? Nobody. Who owns the patent on horseradish root? Nobody. These are natural substances. Off patent by definition, there is no exclusive right available to any company on earth, which means there is no economic incentive for any company on earth to spend the money required to officially prove what Amish grandmothers have been demonstrating in their own homes for 2 centuries. This is what that consultant in 2009 meant by commercially inconvenient. The research isn't impossible, the biology isn't a mystery, the traditional knowledge is freely available. The problem is that nobody can make money off the answer. So the answer stays in the binder on page 41, in a cedar chest in Holmes County, instead of on the front page of a medical journal. And while that binder sits there, the average American adult over 50 is paying somewhere between $60 and $120 a month for supplements that, in many cases, contain synthetic versions of the very compounds that exist naturally and in higher bioavailability inside the ferment MIM makes for under $2. Let me give you one more piece that should put a knot in your stomach. There was a systematic narrative review published in 2025 in the journal Frontiers in Nutrition examining the vitamins formed by microorganisms in fermented foods. The researchers documented that fermentation, when done properly, actually creates new vitamins inside the food itself. B vitamins, vitamin K2, and precursors to other essential nutrients are synthesized by the microbes during fermentation. The food becomes more nutritious during the process, not less. A 2-week-old ferment is, by definition, denser in bioavailable nutrients than the raw ingredients you started with. Now compare that to the multivitamin in your cabinet. Most synthetic multivitamins have a bioavailability rate of somewhere between 10 and 30%, depending on the specific compound. Most of what you swallow ends up in your urine. Anyone who has taken a B-complex tablet and watched their urine turn neon yellow an hour later has personally observed this. That bright yellow color is your kidneys filtering out the unused riboflavin because your body couldn't absorb it fast enough. MIM's ferment doesn't have that problem. The vitamins formed during fermentation are produced in a matrix the body already recognizes. They come bundled with the cofactors needed to absorb them. There is no neon yellow afterward, because almost none of it goes to waste. And here is the part that should make every man over 50 stop and reread the sentence. Horseradish compounds are most potent fresh within 30 days of harvest. The honey vinegar matrix reaches peak organic acid concentration at roughly 2 weeks. The traditional Amish timing harvests the horseradish in late September, ferment through October, consume through the winter aligns almost exactly with what modern food chemistry would recommend for maximum bioactive output. The autumn timing means the ferment is at peak potency exactly when respiratory illness season begins. That is not an accident. That is 200 years of careful observation, refined slowly, generation by generation, in kitchens where the wrong recipe could mean a child got sick in February and there was no doctor for 12 miles. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. I know this audience. I know what you've been told. You've been told that the good stuff only works if you have a homestead, if you have chickens, if you have a root cellar dug into the side of a hill, if you have 10 acres of pasture and a smokehouse out back. And I'm here to tell you that is one of the biggest lies sold to American men over 50 in the last 20 years. You do not need a homestead to do this. You need a mason jar, a cabinet, and about 15 minutes of your time. If you live in a 1,500 square foot ranch built in 1972 with a kitchen the size of a postage stamp, this works. If you live in an apartment in Phoenix where the temperature outside hits 110 in July, this works. If you live in a row house in Pittsburgh with no yard at all, this works. The ferment doesn't need land. It needs time and a stable temperature between 60 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the same range every American home is already kept at year-round. Here is what you need. 1 quart mason jar, available at any hardware store, any grocery store, any Walmart. $2 and change. 1 bottle of raw, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar. The brand matters less than the words raw and unpasteurized on the label. About $4 for a 16-ounce bottle, 1 small jar of raw local honey from a farmer's market or a roadside stand, about $6, and 1 horseradish root, which you can find in the produce section of most supermarkets in the fall, or order online year-round, $2 to $3 for a piece large enough for 2 batches. Total upfront investment, including the jar, under $15. And the jar lasts forever, so every subsequent batch is closer to $2 in ingredients. So before I show you the last piece of this, the one written in pencil on page 41 of a 1,923 Holmes County ledger, here is where all of it lives. Every recipe I have pulled out of these kitchens, every method, every technique from this channel is in one place in the description below. It is called the Amish Home System. Now do not go anywhere, because what comes next is the reason I made this entire video. Now, here is the technique I want you to know, the one that almost nobody talks about, even in the homesteading circles online. Temperature control without a root cellar. You do not need a cellar. You need a closet on an interior wall. The closet on an exterior wall, the one facing the cold side of your house in winter or the hot side in summer, will swing too much in temperature. The closet on an interior wall, ideally a hallway closet or a pantry closet, stays within a 5-degree range year-round in almost every American home. That 5-degree stability is what your great-grandmother's cellar did. You have one already. You just never thought of it that way. Put the jar on the floor of that closet, not on a high shelf. Heat rises. The floor is the most stable spot in the entire closet. Cover the jar with a clean kitchen towel to block any light that sneaks in when you open the door. That is your root cellar. Cost $0 additional dollars. If you live somewhere genuinely hot, like the deep south or the desert southwest, and your interior closet still runs above 78 degrees in summer, here is the trick I learned from an Amish woman in a community that had relocated to Tennessee. She kept a clay flower pot, the cheap unglazed terracotta kind, soaked in cool water for 30 minutes. She set the mason jar inside the flower pot. The evaporating water through the porous clay drops the temperature inside the pot by about 8 to 10 degrees, the same principle as a swamp cooler, but for fermenting. Refresh the water every 2 days, costs $3 at any garden center. That single technique, interior closet, floor placement, terracotta backup, means you can produce this ferment anywhere in the continental United States, in any home, at any time of year. There is no climate excuse. There is no kitchen excuse. There is no space excuse. The only thing standing between you and your first batch is a trip to the grocery store and 15 minutes at the counter. And once you have your first batch, you have something else. You have the mother culture for the second stage, the one almost nobody knows about, the one on page 41. Let me tell you about page 41. I want to set the scene properly, because the moment I read it for the first time, I had to ask Eli to step out of the room. Not because I was emotional, although honestly I was, because I needed to read it again, alone, to make sure I was understanding what I was holding. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. Mim was in the kitchen kneading bread. Eli had gone outside to deal with a fence post that had shifted in the recent rains. And he had left me with the binder open on the kitchen table, with the unspoken understanding that I could read whatever I wanted, but I should not photograph the pages, because the binder had been in the family for 4 generations, and his grandmother considered it a private record, not a publication. I respected that then, and I respect it now. I'm not going to read the page verbatim, but I'm going to tell you what it said in my own words, because the technique itself belongs to anyone willing to make it. Page 41 was written in November of 1923 by a woman named Anna, who would have been Mim's great-grandmother. The page was titled, in pencil, simply the long bug, and what Anna described was a second fermentation, a continuation of the first. Once your initial horseradish, vinegar, and honey ferment is finished after the 14 days, after you've strained it, you take about a 1/4 cup of that finished liquid. You do not throw away the horseradish pulp. You keep both. You put them together into a new clean jar. And then you add one ingredient that the first ferment did not contain. You add raw garlic, Specifically, 4 to 6 fresh garlic cloves, peeled and crushed lightly with the flat of a knife, not minced, not pressed, just bruised enough to break the skins and expose the inside of the clove. You top the jar with an additional half cup of fresh apple cider vinegar to cover everything, you seal it loosely, and you let it sit for an additional 4 days. That's it, 4 more days. At room temperature, in your interior closet, on the floor. What happens during those 4 days is, and I'm choosing this word carefully, remarkable. The lactic acid bacteria that were established during the first fermentation now have a new substrate to work on. Garlic contains a compound called alliin, which converts to allicin when the clove is crushed. Allicin is one of the most studied natural antimicrobial compounds on Earth, but raw allicin is unstable. It breaks down within hours when exposed to heat or stomach acid. Most people who eat raw garlic for the antimicrobial benefit get almost none of the allicin into their bloodstream because their stomach destroys it before absorption. Fermentation changes that. The lactic acid bacteria present in the mother culture interact with the allicin and stabilize it, partially converting it into more shelf-stable sulfur compounds, diallyl disulfide, ajoine, S-allyl cysteine compounds that have been studied independently for cardiovascular and immune support. The fermented garlic ferment, what Anna called the long bug, is essentially a delivery system that allows the active compounds of raw garlic to survive digestion in a way that raw garlic alone cannot. Anna didn't know any of that. She wrote in pencil in 1923 that the long bug was strongest for the deep cough, the kind that settles in, the kind that won't break. I have searched. I have asked. I have spoken with people who teach fermentation classes for a living, with homesteaders who have written books, with herbalists who have practiced for 30 years. Almost nobody outside of a few families in Lancaster and Holmes County knows about the secondary garlic fermentation. The basic ginger bug, the basic vinegar tonic, those are on hundreds of blogs. The long bug, the 4-day garlic continuation of the original culture, exists almost exclusively in handwritten family binders like the one on Mim's kitchen table. You take 1 teaspoon of the long bug, strained in the morning during the cold months, or you take it at the first sign of any respiratory tightness, anytime, anywhere. The cost of that teaspoon, when you calculate the ingredients, is under $1. Under $1 for a serving of something that the supplement industry could not legally describe accurately even if they wanted to, because no clinical trial has ever been funded to study it specifically, because nobody can patent garlic. That is your secret finale. That is the page 41 technique. That is what Mim's great-grandmother wrote down 102 years ago in pencil, and what the supplement industry has never had a financial reason to acknowledge. You can start the first stage tonight. You can start the long bug 18 days from now. By Christmas, you will have a ferment on your shelf that does what 20 or 30 bottles in your current cabinet are pretending to do for somewhere around $2 a batch. So here is what I want you to feel before you click away. Somewhere along the line, somebody decided it was more profitable if you forgot how to do this. Somebody decided your ignorance was their revenue, and the families in Holmes County and Lancaster County never agreed to that bargain because they were too busy doing it the old way to even notice the new way was being sold to the rest of us. You just got it back, not from a website, not from a marketing campaign, from a kitchen table, from a binder, from a woman named Anna who wrote in pencil in 1923 and didn't know that 102 years later somebody like you would need to read what she wrote. If you are the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's profit, you already know what to do next. I want you to tell me one thing in the comments below. I want to know what is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now that you think the ferment might be able to replace first. Be specific. Tell me the brand. Tell me the cost. Tell me how long you've been buying it. Because I read every single comment, and I want to know exactly what this audience is paying for that they shouldn't have to pay for anymore. Leave the comment. Don't just think it. The comment is how this knowledge spreads. The comment is how the next person finds out. And if you found value in this, subscribe to the channel, not because it helps me, but because it puts you inside a quiet group of people who are recovering knowledge that was almost lost. There are more pages from that binder, there are more techniques from those kitchens. The next video I'm working on covers something Mim showed me about wood, ash, and cast iron that completely changed how I think about preserving food without a refrigerator. And there is a single sentence in a 1947 county extension bulletin that confirms it works exactly the way she said it does. You don't want to miss that one. Make your first batch this weekend. Set the jar on the floor of your interior closet. Mark the date on a piece of masking tape. 14 days from now, you'll strain your first batch. 18 days from now, you'll start the long bug. And about 3 weeks from now, you'll wake up one morning, take a teaspoon of something you made yourself for under $2, and feel that same window open in the back of your head that I felt at Mim's kitchen table 6 years ago. That feeling is not new. That feeling is what your great-grandparents felt every morning of their lives. Somebody took it from you. Now you're taking it back. I'll see you on the next one. But before you click away, I want to give you a few more things because I have been getting messages from people who started their first batch after the last video, and the questions they are asking me are the same questions I asked Mim in that kitchen 6 years ago, and the answers deserve to be on the record. The first question is always about the smell. Around day 4 or day 5, you are going to walk past that closet and you are going to catch something that does not smell like food. It smells a little like a wet basement, a little like sourdough starter, a little like the inside of an old cider jug. That smell is correct. That smell is the lactobacillus colonies hitting their stride and pushing the pH down past 4, which is the threshold below which almost nothing dangerous can survive. A 1,923 USDA Farmers Bulletin, number 1,438, lays this out in plain language. It says that properly soured vegetable brines reach a hydrogen ion concentration incompatible with the propagation of putrefactive organisms, and it gives the exact figure of 3.4 to 3.6 as the stable endpoint. Mim did not know the number 3.4. She did not need to. She knew the smell and she knew the taste on the back of a wooden spoon, and she knew that when the bubbles slowed from a hard fizz to a slow lazy rise, the jar was done talking. The second question is about scum. You are going to see a white film on the top of your brine somewhere between day 6 and day 9. People panic, they throw the jar out. Do not throw the jar out. That white film is called calm yeast, and it is harmless. It is not mold. Mold is fuzzy and comes in colors blue, green, black, pink. Calm is flat, white, and looks like a thin skin of milk. You skim it off with a clean spoon. You wipe the inside rim of the jar with a paper towel dipped in the brine itself, not water, the brine, and you push everything back under the surface. Mim used a small scrubbed river stone for this. I use a glass fermentation weight I bought for $4. Either works. The principle is the same. Anything above the brine line is exposed to oxygen and will eventually spoil. Anything below the brine line is in an anaerobic acid bath and is essentially fortified against decay. That is the whole secret. That is the entire technology. Submersion plus salt plus time. The third question is about salt. Specifically, what kind and how much. The binder Mim kept on top of the icebox listed the ratio as 1 good handful to the gallon, which is not useful to anyone who does not have Mim's hand, so I weighed it. 3 separate batches, 3 separate weighings, and the average came out to a hair under 58 grams of salt per gallon of unfluorinated water, which is roughly 2% by weight, which is exactly the ratio that the Cornell Extension Service published in a 1962 pamphlet on home pickling, and exactly the ratio that the Polish, Korean, and German fermentation traditions all converged on independently over the last 600 years. Different continents, different vegetables, same number. That is not coincidence. That is biology telling you what it wants. Use real salt, sea salt, kosher salt, pickling salt, mined rock salt. Do not use iodized table salt, because the iodine suppresses the lactobacillus and you will get a sluggish, bitter ferment that never properly acidifies. This is not folklore. The Journal of Food Science ran a study in 1979. I have the citation written on the inside cover of my own binder now, that measured iodized salt-knocking lactobacillus plantarum growth down by something like 40% compared to non-iodized controls. 40%. That is the difference between a jar that works and a jar that fails. The fourth question is about water. If your tap water is chlorinated, and almost all municipal water in this country is, you have to either let it sit out in an open pitcher for 24 hours so the chlorine gas is off, or you have to boil it for 15 minutes and let it cool to room temperature before you use it. Chlorine is designed to kill microorganisms. It does not distinguish between the bad ones in a treatment plant and the good ones in your jar. Mim drew her water from a hand pump on a well that had been dug, according to the date scratched into the wellhead cap in 1889. That water had never met a chlorine molecule in its life, and the ferments she made with it were the most alive things I have ever put in my mouth. You probably do not have an 1,889 well, that is fine. A glass pitcher on the counter overnight will get you 95% of the way there. Now I want to talk about something harder. I want to talk about what happens to your body in the first 2 weeks, because nobody warned me, and I think people deserve to be warned. When you start taking a tablespoon of properly soured live ferment every morning on an empty stomach, your gut is going to react. For the first 3 to 5 days, some people get mild bloating, some people get loose stools, some people get a headache that feels like caffeine withdrawal even if they have not changed their caffeine intake. This is what the older texts call a cleansing reaction, and what modern microbiome researchers, somewhat more carefully, call a population shift. The opportunistic bacteria that have been running the show in your intestines for years, the ones that thrive on sugar and processed seed oils and stress, are being outcompeted, and die-off byproducts have to be cleared. It passes. It always passes. By day 7 or day 8, you stop noticing it. By day 14, you start noticing the absence of things you did not know you had. The afternoon energy crash. The mid-sentence word that you could not find. The slight, constant, low-grade inflammation in your hands when you wake up. These things quietly walk out of the room and do not come back as long as you keep the jar going. Mim told me one more thing on my last visit. In the fall, about 6 months before she passed, she was sitting in the same chair with the same light coming through the same window, and she said, "The body remembers what the kitchen forgets." I did not understand it then. I think I understand it now. Your body has 50,000 generations of ancestors who ate something living and sour and salted every single day of their lives. Your body is built around the assumption that this input will arrive. When it does not arrive, when every meal is sterile, pasteurized, shelf-stable, sealed against time, your body does not stop expecting it. It just starts to fail quietly, in small ways, in ways you blame on age or stress or screen time. Put the input back, watch what happens. I'll see you on the next one.